Welcome back. What does God's silence mean for my prayer life? In the previous reflection, it was suggested that to enter the scene of the gospel is to participate in it, paying attention to every detail. It is to realize how our salvation took place, how it is taking place, and even how in the future our salvation will be taking place in our lives. However, it is true that we struggle to get used to prolonged silence, to train our gaze to contemplation. Today, before we explain this way of getting into silence, we will answer a question of a young man from Tanzania. It is going to continue responding to these questions because they portray a genuine sense of growth in spiritual life. He wrote, "Father, it is true that even our liturgy is made of gestures, singing, listening, and even silence. But what does God's silence mean for my prayer life?" Well, for me, it seems to discourage prayer because somehow I feel like God is not answering my prayers. That is the end of the request, the question that was presented to us. Let us try to answer this question in a simple way. That way, we shall make sense of all what we are doing in these lessons. This becomes, of course, our fourth lesson, and in a way, it will be answering the question that we have had before. That God's silence is a way of saying, "I have heard you," can also be seen from the occasion in the Gospels when Jesus was silent in the presence of someone's requests. We have many episodes, but I will use this episode which has got some sense because then Jesus acts. He was silent when the Canaanite woman asked him to heal her daughter in Matthew chapter 15, verse 21 to 28. The Canaanite woman knew who Jesus was and had heard of his compassion. And so, in the face of his silence, she cast herself upon his mercy and says, "Lord, help me." Well, that was the prayer of the Canaanite woman. In front of this, Jesus is silent. But my friends, can't we read the silence in this case to mean that he was telling the woman, "I have heard you, trust me, trust me," and almost digging out that trust from her heart, letting her insist in her prayer? Silence is the language of the mystery, but it is also the space where the true relationship with God happens. Yes, it will be like this. You can say, "I have prayed to God, I've told you what I need, you have not heard me, you are no longer my God." But you can also say, "You are my God, even though you didn't answer me directly." In fact, there can be no contemplation without silence. And the deepest level of our relationship with God is exactly there, in contemplation, where I discover that I'm loved and I discover this is my beloved. We could say that silence does not represent so much the other side of contemplation or prayer life. It is the very act of prayer, of contemplation, of being in a deep relationship with God. It might seem to me that I am doing nothing precisely, or actually that God on the other side is not even listening. But it is not true. It is not true that when I'm silent, I am not worshiping or praising God, or when God is silent, He is used to hearing my wants and He is not ready to receive my prayer. Indeed, it is the other way round. The hardy church fathers used to say, in Latin, Silentium, pulcherrima, caerimonia. Translated means, silence is the most beautiful representation of the rite, the most impressive liturgy. So, even the silence of Jesus in front of the prayer of the Canaanite woman was part of her prayer. And if I just can't help but speak, for example, the disciples saying, answer her, she is disturbing, then I have to accept that my words are swallowed in the depths of God's silence. Why? It is also important to remember that when listening to people, our silence is very important, not even the answers. In silence, we give them the idea that we are there for them. And in silence, I begin to resemble God in His silence. It is a way of mirroring God. So, away from the case of the Canaanite woman, back to our prayer life, silence helps me to mirror God, to resemble God. And sooner or later, I will learn to silence not only my thoughts and my wants, but all my being. There is so much power in that moment of true silence that it would lead me to union with the silent one, God. Does it mean that God does not speak, does not answer to us? No. Therefore, in reading the Word of God, silence is this mysterious moment where, like the moon getting its light from the sun, I draw my inner light from looking at God's luminous face, at His luminous presence. And God is luminously present in the Word of God. My face becomes radiant. In Exodus chapter 34, verse 29, it is narrated of Moses, how his face became radiant because he was accustomed to contemplating the face of God on the mountain. And Moses becomes our prototype of a person who chooses to stay in front of God, even in the silence of God. The failure to see the splendor of one's own face is a typical suffering of every true prophetic vocation. So even when I don't see that my face is radiant, I must remember it is typical of every prophetic vocation. If anything, it makes the person humble and he becomes a perennial beggar of maturity, of needing to be seen and heard by others, because only others can see the light on my face as it was for Moses. Therefore, we wish to enter into this encounter with the mystery as was proposed yesterday, this encounter that makes my face radiant. But we already know it is not given to us to see this change, to see myself shining. The others might see it. Then, my dear friends, the silence of God is actually a call to my silence also. So we have to decide to go back in this cyclic movement, where in my silence, in front of God, I see Him and I hear Him, because He is the silence that I need to hear. Like the moon does to get light from the sun, so do I need to go back again and again to God in prayer and contemplation, especially led by the Word of God. Go forth like Mary, Mother of Jesus, and silently keep the Word in your heart. Go forth and be fruitful with this Word. Let this Word bear fruits and let the fruits speak. We know actions speak louder than words. And let us resemble God that way. The image and likeness of God will be much more evident if I train myself to stay in front of God in silence. He who is the silent one will be reflected in my life for the others to see. And I will be that way, the presence of God and His glory wherever I am. May God bless you all.